What's up, all of my students? Now, this video is not directed at any one particular class, so it kind of fit for my U.S. history students and humanities students. But honestly, anybody that comes across this video, past, present, future students, whatever, I think it's pretty good advice video that applies kind of to everybody, or hopefully gives everybody something to consider and think about. Now, I know it's busy time, it's exam week. I'll try to be pretty brief and concise with this. Everybody's got a lot going on, but these are my final words to you. Most of my students that are finishing up this year and heading on to summertime and then on to future adventures, whether it be at Michigan Center or somewhere else, depending on where life takes you. Now, if you haven't watched the other life advice video that I had released kind of last week, where it was the 3 components to a good life, if there's only one more thing you ever hear from me, I would say go tune into that first. If you haven't heard it, that's pretty important stuff that I think applies to everybody. And I don't think that there's a whole lot of life advice out there that you can give that it's like one size fits all, because humans are different. We're unique. On my 3 components to a good life video, I kind of account for that and think that is, it'll look different for everybody depending on how you apply it. I think the same is true for this. I'm not telling you, this is kind of like my top 10 list of advice that I'm leaving you with, but a lot of it isn't necessarily pointed, specific advice telling you what to do. It's things for you to consider. So go into it that way. Also know that I'm just a history teacher in Jackson, Michigan. I'm a guy that's been around this planet for 40 years. You can take my advice or leave it. I'm not telling it to you like it's the gospel truth, but I think this might give a lot of you something to consider and think about, and hopefully it'll be something that you can apply to your life. You'll take at least one little snippet or nugget out of here, and it'll be valuable for you now and down the road in the future. So you can count this one as Tylutki's final words to you, leaving the pandemic school year, and it'll be my top 10 list of some just good old-fashioned adult advice I'm passing on your way. So first thing I have for you, I think it's very wise for a student, not necessarily not knowledgeable. We sometimes conflate being smart and being wise, okay? Being really smart or knowledgeable, that's like having a lot of facts in your head. Being wise is like a little bit different. That's more like in the street smarts type category, if you know what I'm talking about there. But I think a wise young person considers and listens to advice from all the adults, all the people in their life that they come into contact with that have more life experiences, have more years on planet Earth going through and being a human. I think a wise youth listens to advice from all of the adults that care about them. Now, there will be some adults out there that you don't really know or you come into contact with once or twice, and they'll tell you you need to do this or that or the other. Well, maybe that's good advice, maybe it's not. But again, I think I circle back to think about the adults in your life that actually care about you. I know a lot of my students I care deeply about. So like if you've had face-to-face conversations with me and interactions, you're in that group. I would try to give you the best possible advice I can. But I mean, it's not limited to teachers. Some teachers might be in this category, some might not. But adults out there, it could be your parents, it could be grandparents, an aunt and uncle, a family friend, could be your preacher, could be some teacher, who knows? But listen to people with more life experience with you. Consider what they say. Doesn't mean you have to always follow their advice. You have a brain. You need to make up your own mind. But consider the advice of people that have more life experience than you, and seriously consider it. Take it to heart and think about it when you're figuring out what your future path would be. That's a very wise thing for a young person to do. Okay, some of this stuff will get a little bit more specific. Number 2 on my list is be careful with screen time. You guys have grown up in a world where, like, screens and cell phones have just become ubiquitous, especially after this past year of, schooling through the pandemic. We are on screens more than we ever have been before, but like humans evolve very, very slowly and change, for tens of thousands of years. Humans had zero screen time. And now all of a sudden, within about a generation, that's something that consumes our life. The human body hasn't reacted or changed at all. We're the same people genetically as Abraham Lincoln was, or as George Washington, or as some ancient Roman or Egyptian was. So the human body and the basic components to us are the exact same as they always have been through history, but the situation, the environment has changed dramatically with screens becoming so important and centered to our lives. So limit your screen time. Be wise with that too. And a lot of the data coming out in the last 10 years or so show that, students are attached. I mean, their phone has become an appendage to them, and kids are on social media more than ever, and playing video games more than ever too. Typically, this is very broad, and there's exceptions to it, but girls seem to focus in more on the social media, and there is a strong correlation between the amount of time you spend on social media and how depressed or anxious you get. Very concerning numbers where that's like gone up and spiked up, and it goes right with the amount of screen time that we're getting as a society. So in general, if you're a younger girl, high school age, think about it. If you feel miserable after spending hours on, Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or whatever the case may be, maybe you want to start cutting back on that. I'm not saying delete all your accounts, but hey, use it wisely. Have it be something that benefits your life and makes you better, not something that controls you and that you become a slave to it. The data would show too that younger high school age teenage boys are on social media quite a bit, but not as much as the girls seem to be. But they're on playing video games all the time, which honestly, video games, hey, that's fine. I grew up playing a Nintendo and a Sega Genesis and stuff. Have fun with games, but don't be on it 10 hours a day. Don't be on it 5 hours a day. You need to limit that. And you also need to get outside and take care of your body and get out in nature a little bit too, and have face-to-face conversations. So kind of more pointed advice that I think also fits for everybody. Limit your screen time. Be mindful of that. Next up, number 3 on my list is college versus work. Now, a lot of teachers will tell you everybody should go to college. Get your grades up. Do what you have to do. Take out the loans. Get there. You'll be better off with a college degree. I used to say that at the beginning of my teaching career, and the more I've thought about it and the more I've watched how the price of college seems to it's gone up 500% since the 1980s. Think about that, 500%, a 5-fold increase. Now, the money supply hasn't inflated even close to that quick. I believe I heard a stat that, how money becomes worth less over time because the government prints more of it. That's called inflation. College increases in price have gone up 4 times faster than the rate of inflation. So not only is college costing more to go to it today, it's costing almost like exponentially more over time. I don't know. And I feel like college is a great path for some kids. And if you can find a scholarship or a way to go, or you have somebody in your family that's going to pay for your college degree, I would say in general, you probably want to go and get that degree. You probably will be better off with it. But there's a lot of kids I know, a lot of kids at Michigan Center, some that are very good students that definitely could have got into college, that ended up choosing not to and got into the world of work right away, and they're doing outstanding. Whatever you end up doing, remember, you want to be in that 15% of Americans that love their job. Find some job that fulfills you and gives you meaning and can also pay the bills. Sometimes more money isn't necessarily the most important thing. And the way college loans are today, some kids get out, and if you were taking out, going to U of M and coming out to be a teacher, and you pay for your whole college experience by taking out federal loans, with what teachers make, you'll never pay it back. That would be just kind of a dumb thing to do at this point, this stage in the game. Now, if you want more specific advice on this, I'm not telling anybody they should go or shouldn't go to college, but I'm saying have some goals, be ambitious, set that stuff out and come up with a plan. And honestly, you should talk to other teachers, other adults in your life, again, circling back to number 1, and come up with a plan for you. you. And if you need some advice, that's not something that I can just give out as blanket life advice to anybody. I need to get to know you a little bit more. So if you're curious and want to know more what I think about what your path maybe should be or what I would recommend, come in and talk to me. You can hit me up and email me over summer break. You can pop in and see me next school year. You can wait till your senior year, whenever. It can be after you graduate. Come talk to me. That's the most important thing I do in education. I don't think it's teaching U.S. history or humanities, although that would be pretty high on the list. I think the most important thing I do is try to mentor and help young people out and get on a good path for them in life. So you think about that, whether college or just entering the workforce or maybe some other option I'm not throwing out there would be best for you. Number 4, this is strong, I think very powerful life advice that a lot of people don't say this, and you may not have heard it quite like this before, but I strongly recommend that you don't make any permanent changes in your life until your brain is fully developed. Now, logical next question. Tylutki, when is your brain fully developed? Well, that's slightly different for everybody. There is no exact age where, bam, now you got a fully developed brain. But in general, humans don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. That's that front part of your brain where you do that higher end cognitive thinking. That's not fully developed until you're in your mid 20s. So some people it might be 23, some people it might be 26, 27. But I would strongly encourage you to don't do any permanent changes in your life until you have a fully developed brain. So roughly wait till your mid 20s before you go get that tattoo you've been checking out. You know what I mean? The stuff I would have got tattooed on me when I was 18 is definitely not what I would have wanted to have tattooed on me when I was 25 or 30. And I did wait. I'm not like anti-tattoo. Don't take it that way. Maybe that's a weird rabbit hole to go down, but I'm actually kind of pro-tattoo. But in general, I think you shouldn't go start inking yourself up or doing something permanent until your brain's fully developed. That would go for college loans too. I don't think you should be taking out massive amounts of loans when you're 18 or 19 years old because you can't declare bankruptcy on those. Student loans are one of the only kinds of debt that you can't declare bankruptcy on and get out of, like you could a house payment or a car payment if you bit off more than you could chew. So to have those loans saddled with you, and maybe you drop out of college after a year or two, and then you got $40,000 in debt, and it's with you until you die or pay it off. That's a pretty big permanent change. But in general, I'd say don't do anything that's going to be permanent and unchangeable until you're in your mid 20s. And I think that all would go into my next little bit of life advice too. Number 5 is talking about marriage and kids. Well, once you have a kid, unless you put them up for adoption or something like that, that's kind of an undoable thing. That's going to be your kid for as long as the two of you are alive. And same thing with marriage. Now, you can get a divorce and get out of that, but I would say that's a pretty big life change too. Now, I'm not going to tell anybody ever that they should get married or that they should have kids or vice versa, or you shouldn't. I think that's something that you want to really think about and consider. And again, you should probably wait until you're at least about in your 20s, mid 20s or so, before you take the plunge on either of those things. Marriage is tough. And I don't care if it's a traditional marriage, like a man and a woman, like me and my wife. And actually, we were high school sweethearts. We went to prom together. We're one of the few people. We got voted most likely in our class to get married. And here we are 20 some years later, and we actually are married with kids. But that's kind of a rare exception. Very few people are still with the person by the time they're 40 that they were dating when they were 16 or 17. Doesn't mean it can't happen. I'm proof it can happen. But there's been a lot of rocky patches along the way. And my wife and I didn't get married and didn't have kids until we were in our late 20s. Now, I don't care if it's that kind of a relationship, or if you're maybe gay or trans or non-binary or any kind of relationship. I'm talking about, when I say marriage, I'm just talking about having a significant other, and I don't even really care about the piece of paper you sign. And, that is a big deal. It's something you're signing off, and it's a state like legal document. But I'm saying in general, that's something you need to consider a lot and think on a lot to decide whether you want to enter a long-term, committed relationship, or whether you want to have kids. Don't let anybody else ever push you to making that decision one way or the other, because here's the thing. If you want to travel your whole life and be kind of selfish and just be the best you can be and go have fun and all that, well, maybe you don't want to have kids or be in a committed relationship. And I don't judge you at all, but here, if you go have kids and get married and then you decide, oh, I want to go travel all over and I'm ditching them, and well, that's kind of a rotten thing to do, because if you are making the commitment to have kids, you should be there for them, right? And you should try to be the best parent you can be, and that should be a top priority for you. Also, marriage and kids can give a lot of meaning and purpose to your life. I would say being a dad is my number one most important job that I feel like I have in life. But just because that works for me doesn't necessarily mean you should do it too. You have to think deeply on that, and everybody has to kind of choose their own path there. So again, if you want better, more personalized life advice for you as an individual, come get to know me and chat with me a little bit, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it, because I think getting into a relationship and having kids isn't always the easiest path. I've enjoyed it. I don't regret it. I would do it again. But there's been a lot of rocky bumps along that road, and maybe that wouldn't be for you. So again, think about it quite a bit. Number 6 on my list is try to be a minimalist. If you've never heard that term before, minimalism is a philosophy that basically is have as little material stuff in your life as possible. And I'm not anti-material things. I actually have some stuff that I very much love that are prized possessions. I love my truck. I use it all the time. Cart my dogs and kids around, go camping with it. I'm big into shooting and, the Second Amendment and firearms. I have a couple guns, a pistol in particular that's a 1911, kind of like what the guys were carrying in World War II and in Vietnam, that I love it. It's a prized possession of mine. But I'll say those 2 items, like my truck and then my favorite firearm, those are things that I feel like add value to my life. They were worth the cost. I would be bummed out if I didn't have them. I enjoy using both of those things. They add value. There's a lot of people, I think, that equate, especially in America, that just buying more things, accumulating more stuff is going to make you happier. But the evidence and the data shows that a lot of times people, they get caught in that rat race and they're just they go buy a new truck and they get the new camper and some jet skis. And then as soon as they get out there and use them, they're happy for a couple weeks, a month or two. And then they see somebody else with newer jet skis and a bigger camper and a better truck. And then they want to just upgrade, and they get caught in this cycle of never having enough and always wanting more. And that's a rough, rotten place to kind of be in. So with minimalism, to kind of explain that and put a finer point on it, add material things to your life. Work hard, accumulate that kind of stuff, but accumulate things that actually add value to your life. If you look at something and you say, you know what, this is going to be a bill. It's going to cost me money. It's going to put stress on me. I'm going to have to work overtime. And I don't even really care about it one way or the other. It's just one more thing. Well, why are you doing that to yourself? Work hard, earn money, sure, do all that. Be smart with your finances and buy cool, good material things. But you should always ask yourself, is this something that's going to add value to my life? If the answer is yes, well, then probably go for it. But if the answer is no, I'd say maybe that's not something you want to add into your life. And for what it's worth, I'm kind of an agnostic. I'm not really like religious or an atheist. I'm not really kind of on either side. I haven't made up my mind yet, but we just did a religion unit in my humanities class. And for what it's worth, Jesus and the Buddha, from one of the main guys from Western religions and one of the main guys from the Eastern religions, both are kind of minimalists, I think. It would be very safe to say they were extreme minimalists, where they tried to not have hardly any possessions that were tying them down at all, and said that you're actually freer and you suffer less if you have less burdens and material things that you have to pay for. So maybe a little bit, whether you're religious or not, maybe a little bit of wisdom in that philosophy. Number 7. Okay, human life, even though, and some people might get mad at me for saying it this way, human life has become incredibly easy. Now, a lot of you might say, dude, this last year was tough. I have all kinds of struggles and problems in my life. Yes, but in a different kind of way from humans of a couple hundred or a couple thousand years ago. Think for most of human existence, for tens of thousands of years, humans literally had to struggle just to survive, just to get their next meal, to not get eaten by the lion or the bear, to stay alive with the other tribe next door that's trying to attack them and steal all their stuff. Human existence was a struggle for a long, long time, for the vast majority of history. Now, we're lucky enough to live in the 21st century, in a first world country, America. And you know what? Even the poorest people in America, by and large, don't have to worry about starving to death. And if something horrible happens, even if you don't have health care, you can go to the hospital, and the ER has to give you some treatment. So I know people are all over the spectrum in terms of socioeconomic status and money. But my message is, life in general, just to survive, has become way easier than it was for past generations. But humans are wired in their head. We evolved or were created, whichever way, whichever camp you fall into, to thrive on struggling and like to have to overcome challenges. So here's the thing: in a modern society like America's, even people that are kind of maybe in the poverty line or not making a ton of money, they don't really have to struggle just to survive, right? But we're wired to have that struggle mechanism in our head. And a lot of times, if life does become easier, we still want to struggle. And that's why I think we see so many crazy, weird, bizarre problems happening in our society now, and so much fighting and animosity. It's that not really anybody is struggling to survive. So we look for other issues and we make that like a survival issue. Hopefully that kind of makes sense to you. Anyway, my message is, how do you remedy that? Well, I'm not saying go live like a hunter-gatherer or go move out into the middle of the jungle and try to, shoot deer to just survive and try to avoid that lion or the bear or whatever. I wouldn't do that. I'm not doing that either. I kind of like my easier modern American lifestyle. But what you have to do, I think, to make yourself a well-balanced person is, you need to go struggle. You need to find ways to incorporate some struggling and challenges into your life. Pick up new hobbies. Go out there and exercise hard. I don't even care what it is, but you have to find ways where you're struggling, even though it might not be life or death or anything like that. In fact, I would encourage you, don't make it a life or death struggle, but you need to put struggles into your life and have to work hard to overcome obstacles and get better and improve. If you do that, I think most people that incorporate that into their life end up becoming happier, more well-balanced people. Next up, number 8. This comes from a guy who is a Canadian psychologist who has become kind of controversial. His name's Jordan Peterson. And I've heard him talk several times in interviews. I'll say I'm not saying you should listen to him and agree with everything he says. There's a lot of things he says that I don't necessarily agree with. But this one little bit of advice I heard him give one time really has stuck in my head. And I think it's super important and everybody should hear it. So it's kind of in regards to sportsmanship that you'll hear as a kid growing up, and maybe you've been in some sports, maybe not, but it's not about winning or losing. It's about how you play the game. Okay, to expand on that a little bit more, I think essentially that's true. But winning and losing are kind of important, and we get competitive, and I'm a super competitive guy. I was a high school football player and wrestler, and I'm just wired to be competitive. But remember this, the most important thing is not whether you win or lose the game. It's playing the game in such a way that you get invited back to play the next game. Think about that. The most important thing isn't whether you win or lose the game. It's playing it in such a way that you get invited back to the next game. If you're so wired, and I see this with my sons, one of them is super competitive, and he wants to win so bad. Sometimes he'll borderline push the rules and cheat, or he gets really competitive and he'll start yelling, and you broke the rules, and and he gets all this animosity and stuff, all because he wants to win so bad. And I'm like, dude, being competitive is a good thing. That'll probably serve you well through most walks of life. But if you piss the other kids off or the other person off that's playing with you so much that they don't want to play you again, well, what did you really win? If it's some backyard basketball game or a board game or even like some varsity sporting event, if you do it in such a way that you rub everybody the wrong way and turn them off and nobody wants to interact with you, you haven't won anything. You've actually lost there, even if you technically did win that game or that hand or event or whatever. So you want to remember, we are, to our core, we're like social apes. We need other people. Even whether you think you do or not, you need to have some other positive relationships in your life. And by getting invited back to the next game, that's a good thing. That's a good social experience. So, all around good sportsmanship. Number 9, getting right down to the end here. Basically, as a mindset type thing as you go through life, I think a lot of things boil down to your overall mindset. Today in America, I see a lot of emphasis being put on who's a victim and what are they a victim for, and really dwelling on those stories. Now, there are a lot of victims out there, and I know maybe this will come across kind of off-putting because, hey, I am a white man and I came from a middle-class family. I'll admit, I have had a pretty good life, and my path has not been the most difficult. So I'm not trying to be hypocritical in saying this, but I'm saying as a mindset thing, and I've seen this play out in students and friends and family members in my life, that people that have a bad thing happen to them, maybe you really are a victim and you have a legitimate claim of victimhood about something. That sucks. Everybody does in small ways. Some people do in really big ways. I'm not even looking to judge in on that or make really any comment there. It sucks if you've been victimized in some way. But if you dwell on that the rest of your life, that's not going to have a great outcome. I think we should definitely look at victimhood, and that should be a component and something that is talked about and discussed, and we try to remedy situations where people are victimized. But I think it's far more important that you have a sense of gratitude. I think, and your outcome will be much better in life if you're very grateful for the things you do have, the positive relationships that are in your life, the help that you've gotten, even if it's been small and you have been victimized legitimately. If you spend all your time and energy focusing on what went bad and the victimization part, you're going to be wired like a pessimist. But you want to be wired more like an optimist and look on the bright side of things. And they say people are far more content and happier in general, even really, really poor people that are in rotten situations. If they can focus on that gratitude and that have that peace in their mind and be happy for what they do have and the opportunities that have presented themselves, those people, even if they're in dire circumstances and, very poor, and like, man, you might look at their life and think, God, they look miserable. Is it that bad if they're happy and content in their own head? A lot of that is just a state of mind. So I would encourage you, try to maximize in your life those feelings of gratitude and the appreciation, and be thankful and grateful for the good things and good people you have in your life. And bad things do happen. You have to overcome them. You might have to, focus on them and get into therapy or talk about and hash out those issues. But you don't want it to dominate your life. You want the positivity to be the key kind of core component in your life. And then last up, going on to the mindset stuff, I think last advice I'll leave you with is be open-minded in life. Keep an open mindset, open to new experiences and ideas. Realize that in this world, a ton of things that are going to happen to you and around you at the national, state, local level, even just in your community, tons of stuff, most stuff is out of your control, and you're not going to be able to change it. You need to be able to kind of go with the flow and have an open mindset where you're willing to be like flexible and roll with the punches, right? Also realize you don't have to have all the answers to everything. I used to feel like, and would get really opinionated when I was in my teens and early 20s, like, man, I want to be the smartest guy out there. I want to have the answers to all these problems and stuff, and I'm right, and I would want to argue about it. The older I've gotten, I would like to think the more wise I've gotten, I've realized I don't have to have all the answers to everything. And actually, there's way more stuff I don't know than the little bit of stuff I do know. The more I kind of switched my mindset and became more open-minded and just kind of try to realize things are out of my control, and I'm just going to do the best I can and learn as much as I can, the more content and happy I've gotten in my life. So anyway, that's Tylutki's top 10 list of life advice. I hope you take something out of it. Feel free to watch it, share it, do whatever. And if you ever have any questions or you want more specific, personalized life advice to you as an individual, for goodness sakes, don't hesitate to come ask me, because like I said, other than being a dad, that's the most important thing I do. Other than being there for my family, my wife and kids, that's the number one priority in my life. But number two is this part of my job, being a mentor and trying to help people out. And I can do that best if I really do get to know you. So whether it's over the summer, whether it's next school year, or down the road, maybe even after you graduate, you can hit me up anytime you ever need, and we'll have a conversation, and I'll do the best I can for you. Doesn't mean you have to take the advice I give you, but hey, it's another perspective out there, and you can consider it, and maybe it'll help you. All right, have a great summer, everybody. Love you guys.